Do you want to know how to discipline children with ADHD? I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds, child development, and education, all through the lens of the principle self-government. And I have raised children with ADHD, so I know what I'm talking about. In this video, we're going to talk about a mindset that you can develop that will actually be beneficial when working with children and youth who have ADHD. We'll also talk about helpful insights of where they might be coming from when they have ADHD, things you can keep in mind so that you can hopefully speak to where they're at. And then third, we'll talk about some helpful solutions and skills that you can utilize to help them successfully learn self-government, whether they have ADHD or not. For many years, I did therapeutic treatment care for troubled teens. So I have 4 children of my own and I have grandchildren now, but I also was a therapeutic treatment parent for troubled teens who were neurodiverse, who had trauma, and many of them had ADHD as well as other neurodiversities that they were dealing with simultaneously as working on their childhood trauma that they had to deal with. I have a lot of experience working with youth that have ADHD, and we've had some great successes. This is actually why the BBC ended up making a documentary of our family, because we were so successful with these troubled teens that would come to our house who had neurodiversities, and also why people started asking me to teach and write about self-government and the method of parenting that I did at my house. So let's get into some of the understandings about ADHD that could maybe be beneficial for your mindset. Mindset, or the way that you see a person or their circumstances or their behavior, can actually make or break a situation that you're in. So you have to make sure as a parent that you're being self-governing too. So this whole channel is called the Teaching Self-Government channel. It's not just for the children, it's for everyone. Self-government is a principle for success and personal empowerment. And when a person is self-governed, they're most liberated, which means they feel like they're free and they're understood. And this is what we absolutely want for ourselves and for the children that we happen to be working with. So as you're working with a child who has ADHD, try not to take their behaviors, which sometimes can be extreme, sometimes can be argumentative, sometimes can be disobedient. Don't take them personally. That doesn't mean you ignore them. Absolutely don't ignore them. That does your child a disservice. Just because your child has a neurodiversity does not mean that you cannot help them have a good quality of life and be able to function as normally as possible. That should be everyone's goal when working with someone who is neurodiverse. Autistic people see things just a little bit different. So you've probably been cluing into some of the behaviors, which is why you sought a diagnosis in the first place. You see that there's sometimes some controllingness, there's definitely distractedness that can happen, but there's also hyper focus where you can't seem to get their attention sometimes. So sometimes you can't get them to focus their attention. Sometimes you can't get them to give you any attention. And a lot of parents just find themselves going, well, that's just how they are. I guess I just have to deal with it. No, that's not exactly true. You need to help them learn the skills that they need. They need to analyze themselves and learn how to behave in a way that's going to bring them social success, just like anybody is. It might be harder for them. They might have to work a little bit more at it, and you might have to have a little bit more patience as you're working at it, but it's absolutely possible for you to teach them self-government skills that they'll need to be a successful adult, just like everyone else. So as you're developing that mindset of how to see this neurodiversity, think of yourself as a teacher, because that is your role. I actually have a whole book about roles and parental roles that can be beneficial. It's called Roles: The Secret to Family, Business, and Social Success. So your role is to teach, their role is to learn. That means we have to actually do the teaching. So think in terms of informing the child or teaching the child instead of making excuses for the child. That's going to make a big difference in the way that you are able to communicate and teach them and how effective you actually will be. If you start now making excuses, they'll use those excuses for the rest of their life. It's just not helpful for them. They need to see themselves analyzing, learning, and growing just like anybody else. So let's talk about some insights that might be helpful for ADHD. A lot of people don't understand the level of impulsivity that can sometimes accompany ADHD. In fact, well, maybe you did notice that. Maybe that's why you went for the diagnosis, but there are some people who don't understand what's going on inside the person who has ADHD. Sometimes they literally feel like they're so unsettled, so shaky inside because they can't get their point across to somebody else. They're trying, it's the wrong time, they're being shut down, people aren't paying attention to them, they're not going for that understanding. They want understanding, but the more and more they over-process on whatever the problem is, which has a tendency to happen a lot with people with ADHD, then what occurs is they end up feeling more misunderstood and more emotional about it. So there's an equation you want to keep in mind, and that is impulsivity plus emotion equals misunderstanding. So they are not going to understand you because they're not going to feel understood, and they'll probably have a hard time getting their point across to you because they're just impulsive and anxious, and they've decided to try to handle that problem with their emotions instead of with their prefrontal cortexes. A person who has ADHD probably has a go-to, like a really fast track to that emotional part of the brain, but they can learn to question it, stop it, and go to front brain instead. It just takes a little bit more work, and you're probably going to have to teach them a lot about emotions. Now, I have a whole training on my website on teachingselfgovernment.com. I have a whole training called The Value and Mastery of Emotions that will probably be very helpful. It goes into details about how our emotions and our thoughts and our feelings all work together and helps a person recognize where they can change some of that emotional response, even if it feels like a really strong craving to go to that back brain. So understanding the brain, understanding the emotions can liberate your ADHD child. So the first thing you're going to want to do is teach your children the 4 basic skills. So these children's books each teach one of the 4 basic skills for success. They're probably appropriate for like ages 12 and under. Those 4 basic skills include following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. When a person learns those 4 basic skills, that gives them all of the steps that they need to analyze so that they can actually solve their problems. So you pre-teach them their skills they'll need for success. You're also going to pre-teach them the scripts and skills that you will need for success. But don't overload it. Don't do too much of it all at once, otherwise they might start to shut down. So I would take 1 book a day. I would read the book. I would practice the skill in the book. I would have that be your focus skill for the day. And then I would praise them for how well they're doing with the skill. I would do minimal correction until I have learned all 4 of these 4 basic skills. Then, once I get to this blue book, which is the one I want to teach last, then I would also teach them the steps for an effective correction, which you can learn in my TSG parenting course. Then when you teach them that skill, they'll be able to accept the consequences, which is what that blue book teaches. So once you've pre-taught them exactly how this is going to roll out, and you've done it in a step-by-step approach, 1 skill a day for maybe a week or 2 as you go through this process, it'll feel a little bit bumpy, but over time you'll iron out those bumps as you start bringing more and more skills online. And that will help them have a gradual transition to learning self-government. If it's too abrupt, it could make it seem impossible for them to do. When I brought youth into my home who had ADHD, I had to remember a lot to keep things simple. When I would give them an instruction, for instance, to do a chore of some sort, I didn't say, okay, I need you to clean the whole bathroom, because that's kind of hard at first because there's too many steps and they can't stay focused on all the steps at the same time. So instead I would say, all right, I need you to clean the sink. Start by cleaning the basin of the sink, then the counter of the sink, then shine the faucet. But I might give them even those steps 1 at a time. Clean the basin of the sink and then come check back. Then I would praise them for that, and then I would say, okay, now it's time to do step 2 of sink cleaning, which is to clean the counter around the basin. And do that, and now check back. And then after that, they're going to clean the faucet and shine it, and then check back. Then you can declare that they have learned how to clean the bathroom sink. Now they have the step-by-step approach. You may even want to put a list in the bathroom so that the next time they can remember the steps and in what order they might want to do them in. If you can break it down more simply for a child with ADHD, it's much easier for them to actually follow through and find that success that they're looking for, just like everybody else. Be sure to keep all the teaching positive. So you'll want to praise them when they're doing things great. Of course, you're going to need to correct when things don't go well and they don't follow the instructions. But try to praise as many things as you can, because a person with ADHD, because they get so distracted or they have a hard time focusing, can sometimes feel like everything is just too negative. They're always getting so many corrections. If you pre-teach what's coming up, what's expected, the skills they need, and you take them step by step through the process by giving them simple skills to begin with while you're teaching them full skill sets, then they'll soon become very accomplished. They'll be capable of doing all kinds of things because they've learned how to break down the skill. A person who has ADHD struggles sometimes with skill breakdown. Just simply teach it as you're helping them learn how to do the different skills, and be patient in the process. Praise them as you do that, and they might feel that they are going to be just as successful as anyone else. So calmness is key. If you are not calm and if they cannot be calm, that's when things start to unravel really quickly. Calmness is the base of self-government. It's right at the root, and I highly recommend spending some time working on your skills for calmness and teaching them skills for calmness as well. I actually have a Calm Parenting Toolkit, which is a mini course all about calmness. That Calm Parenting Toolkit is located on my website, teachingselfgovernment.com, right now for free. It's not my full training, but it's a great first training to go through. So go through the 10 tools for calmness and then move on later to the TSG parenting course to learn all of the other skills that you need for success. But get started on the calmness today. Click on the link in the description below. I'll see you there.